A little girl living on the streets shows up to help a millionaire fix his car. However, he could never have imagined that she was hiding a secret powerful enough to completely change the course of his life. Late afternoon was settling over the sprawling city with its usual sense of urgency. Hurrying cars threaded through the avenues, horns blended with the shouts of street vendors, and an orange-tinted sky squeezed itself between skyscrapers. Amid that urban chaos, a luxury car idling in the right lane drew attention. Its engine had died without warning. The hood was up, the hazard triangle lying on the asphalt. Inside, a man in a dark suit spoke on the phone, his face taut with tension. "I've called twice already. I need a tow truck now, not in an hour," Michael Walker snapped, hanging up in frustration. Michael was known as one of the country's most successful businessmen, owner of a real estate investment network. Yet despite his powerful surname, the expression on his face spoke of more than just daily stress. There was a hidden melancholy beneath his restrained arrogance. "Gonna wait until tomorrow, looking like a sour lemon?" came a voice from beside the car. Michael turned. A girl, no more than 11, with dark skin, bright eyes, and a tousled fringe, grinned mischievously at him. She wore ragged clothes and carried a patched-up backpack. She looked like part of the street, lively, resourceful, bold. "You a mechanic or something?" he shot back, sarcastic. "No, but my uncle was. I learned by watching. Mind if I take a look?" she said, pointing at the open hood. Michael hesitated. The last thing he wanted was to become a laughingstock. But before he could refuse, the girl had already plunged her head under the hood. "This is way too hot. Overheating. Probably the radiator," she murmured as if talking to herself. Then she turned to him. "Got a bottle of water on you?" "In the trunk. Why?" "Trust me, I'm not here to steal anything," she replied, locking eyes with him in a way that for some reason disarmed Michael. He fetched the bottle. The girl carefully removed the cap from the coolant reservoir, waited for the steam to clear, and slowly poured in the water. Then she pulled a bobby pin from her hair and tinkered with a loose connector. "Try starting it now," she said, tapping the hood as if signing off on a job well done. Michael turned the key. The engine growled back to life. He stood there, stunned. How did you know?" "Street instinct. And a little practice," she said proudly, smiling. Michael stepped out of the car. For the first time in a long while, he felt a spark inside him, something between curiosity and admiration. There was something about this girl that completely defied his expectations for that day. "What's your name?" "Maria." "You out here alone?" "No, I've got my guardians," she said disdainfully, flicking her fingers in quotation marks. "But don't worry, I can take care of myself." He studied her silently for a moment. So small, yet so strong. She reminded him of someone he'd rather forget. "Can I buy you lunch?" Maria raised an eyebrow. "For real? At a restaurant?" "Yeah." "Then let's go before you change your mind." At the nearest diner, Maria ate as if she hadn't seen a meal in days. Maybe she hadn't. Michael, meanwhile, simply watched, intrigued. Every gesture, the way she spoke, how her eyes scanned everything around her. It was as if time had taken on a strange new shape. Then he saw it. The ring, small, gold, with a turquoise stone at its center. His heart skipped a beat. "That ring. Where did you get it?" Maria glanced down at her hand casually. "It was my mum's. She gave it to me before..." She swallowed hard. "Before she left." Michael grabbed a napkin and wiped his brow. This was impossible. It was the same ring, the one he'd had custom-made for Rachel years ago, a one-of-a-kind design. He was certain of it. "What was your mother's name?" Maria shrugged. Rachel Parker." "Why?" Michael's world tilted. The food on his plate turned tasteless. That name, that ring, those eyes. She couldn't be her. Or could she? He stood up, masking his shock with a forced smile. "That's a beautiful name." Maria returned the smile. She was a beautiful person. Silence settled between them, heavy, with something neither could yet name. For the first time in ages, Michael felt that something was about to change, and that it was far bigger than he'd expected. On the sidewalk outside the restaurant, as the girl said her goodbyes, Michael stood watching. She slipped away among cars, buildings, and the throng of people. But she left behind something more powerful than a working engine, an unsettling question, and a hope he'd thought buried forever. Michael didn't sleep that night. He tossed and turned on expensive sheets as if he were lying on stones. His gaze drifted between the ceiling and the darkness, but his mind was fixed on a single point: the girl, Maria. Her mother's name echoed like a muffled thunder: Rachel Parker. He got up before dawn. He walked to his office, unlocked a drawer that hadn't been opened in years. There it was, an old photograph, a face that still haunted him. Rachel smiling on a summer afternoon, wearing that same blue ring on her finger, now on a street kid's hand. He brought his hand to his face, trying to hold back the avalanche of emotions. This couldn't be a coincidence. The next morning, Michael set aside appointments, meetings, his entire schedule. He put on simple clothes, grabbed his car, and drove back to the place where he'd first met Maria. He spent hours driving around. He saw other children, heard shouts, smelled the street, the smoke, the life he'd long avoided, until finally she appeared. She was sitting on the step of a closed shop, chewing a piece of stale bread. When she saw him, she broke into an unabashed smile. "Look who's back, Mr. Broken-Down Car!" Michael smiled, surprised by how easily she breached his defenses. "I came back because I owe you dessert and a few questions." Maria stood and fell in step beside him. They went to a humble bakery. Michael ordered 2 coffees. She ordered a slice of carrot cake with chocolate frosting. "So," he began, looking her straight in the eyes, "the ring. You said it belonged to your mother." Maria nodded, her mouth full. "She gave it to me before she left. Said it was special, that she got it from someone important a long time ago." "Do you remember what she looked like?" "Of course, I was 7 when she got sick." "And where is she now?" Maria stared at her plate. Her voice trembled. "She died in a hospital. It was all so quick. A woman named Mercedes took care of me afterward." Michael breathed deeply. He felt on the brink of something immense, as though he were about to open a door that could never be closed again. "Do you have any photos of your mother?" Maria hesitated for a moment. Then she pulled a crumpled envelope from her backpack. She took out a faded photograph. The picture was worn, but clear enough. Rachel. The world stopped. Michael's chest tightened. It was her. The same smile, the same deep eyes, brown hair falling over her shoulders. She was holding a baby on her lap. Behind her, a park bench. He held the photo with trembling hands. "That is Rachel Parker?" Maria nodded. "She's my mom." Michael closed his eyes. The image before him looked torn from his past, a past he believed buried. He remembered that face perfectly, her soft voice, her gentle laughter. He remembered their final fight, the bitter goodbye. He never saw her again, never spoke to her. And now, here was a girl who bore her features, wearing the ring he had chosen, calling her mom. "You said a woman named Mercedes took care of you. Was she related to your mother?" Maria shrugged. "I don't really know. She showed up at the hospital, took me with her, said Mom left a note, but she never showed it to me." "Where is this woman now?" "She's around, looks after several kids. She's complicated, but she's all we have." Michael carefully slid the photo back into the envelope. His mind whirled. This was more than coincidence. It was as if fate were pointing him towards something he needed to see, something he needed to fix. "Maria, may I ask you a hard question?" She looked at him warily. "Have you ever thought that maybe I knew your mother?" Maria's eyes widened. "Really?" Michael nodded. "Yes, many years ago. She was very special to me." Maria fell silent. After a few seconds, she said, "I always felt her story was more than what I was told. I never understood why she died alone, why no one came. Maybe you're part of that story." The honesty in her voice struck him like a direct blow to the heart. Michael had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable, and at the same time so certain he needed to follow this trail. "I need to know more, Maria. About you, about your mother, and about this Mercedes person." Maria looked at him with serious eyes, then nodded. "All right, but if you're lying, I can take care of myself, okay?" He smiled, moved. "I'm not lying. I think you just reignited something in me I thought was dead." On the sidewalk before they parted ways, Michael watched Maria as if she were an ancient mystery about to be unraveled. Something inside him told him this girl wasn't just a chance encounter. And deep down, he already knew his life would never be the same. Michael wasn't the same after seeing Rachel's photo in Maria's hands. The image chased him around every corner, in every silence. It was as if the past had returned not just to haunt him, but to demand answers. And he knew he couldn't ignore the call. The next morning, he dressed plainly and drove to the public hospital Maria had mentioned, a rundown building in a peripheral neighborhood where Rachel had spent her last days. When he identified himself at reception, he met resistance. Medical records, especially death certificates, weren't handed over to just anyone, but Michael knew how to be persuasive when necessary. He used Rachel's full name, the approximate date of death, and offered a generous sum as a voluntary donation to the hospital. The clerk finally relented, though reluctantly. "Here it is, Rachel Parker, admitted in March 2019, passed away 3 weeks later. Cause of death: pneumonia aggravated by malnutrition and systemic infection." Michael read the paper as if it were a verdict, her name printed in black and white, a silent, anonymous death. Did she have anyone with her? Visitors? Family? The woman flipped through the file. Only one regular visitor, name Mercedes Oliveira. She claimed to be a friend of the patient and took custody of the child after the mother's passing. Child? Yes, Maria Parker, age 7. The companion provided documents as her legal guardian and signed the release forms right after the funeral. Michael clenched his fists. Mercedes. The name now tasted like poison. He remembered what Maria had said. She never saw any note, never knew of any relative. Everything was handled in the dark, like a covert kidnapping. "May I see those documents?" The clerk hesitated. "They're confidential. But if you intend to pursue legal action, you might want to speak with the social worker on duty at the time, Ms. Dorothy." A short while later, Michael was led to a modest office where a grey-haired woman welcomed him warily. "Did you know Rachel?" "Yes, many years ago. We were very close. I've only just learned she died, and that she left behind a daughter." Dorothy studied him with trained eyes. Rachel was proud and suffered in silence. She never asked for help, even when things got dire. Pneumonia was just the final blow. She arrived weak, exhausted, and said every day, "Take care of my little girl." A lump formed in his throat. And Mercedes. She appeared on the 3rd day of Rachel's stay, claimed to be an old friend, showed paperwork and photographs, said Rachel trusted her. By the time Rachel passed, she already had provisional custody. At the time, it didn't strike us as odd, but now, hearing your story, I wonder if we were naive. Michael fell silent. The image of Rachel alone, sick, trusting her child to someone like Mercedes, gnawed at him. He could have helped. He could have been there. I need to find this woman. I need to know where she is. Maria is still with her today, and she's in danger. Dorothy frowned. I can't give you an address, but I know she operates in central areas, sheltering street kids. She claims it's charity work. She even takes donations from NGOs. But I always found it too suspicious to be genuine. Michael noted every detail. Anger and urgency burned in his chest like fire. This wasn't just a search for justice, it was atonement, an attempt to repair what had been broken by time, pride, and absence. Stepping out of the hospital, the sun blazed mercilessly, contrasting with the darkness spreading inside him. He drove in silence until he stopped in front of an old building, the very place where he and Rachel had once lived so many years ago. He got out and walked to the gate. Everything looked different, but when he closed his eyes, he could almost hear her laughter, see her silhouette on the porch. Why hadn't she reached out to him? Why hadn't she asked for help? Maybe pride, maybe fear, or maybe because someone like Mercedes was already weaving her web. Michael knew from that moment on there was no turning back. He had a promise to keep. No matter what the law said, no matter what family ties revealed, no matter what secrets the past held, Maria had to be protected. And if he had to face ghosts on every front, legal, emotional, criminal, he would. Because now he knew Rachel had died alone. But Maria would never be forgotten. Michael wasn't a man accustomed to moving in the shadows. His world was made of glass-walled offices, digital contracts, and lunches at high-end restaurants. But that day, he found himself weaving through narrow streets, hidden alleys, and bustling open-air markets, following the faint trails left by Mercedes, the woman who claimed to be Maria's protector. Armed with the scant information he'd gleaned from Dorothy and a network of personal contacts, he hired a private investigator. In less than 48 hours, he had an address. The location was a dilapidated townhouse in a central neighborhood where the city's growth seemed to have forgotten to show up. The windows were covered with plastic sheeting and the door plastered with "For Rent" and "For Sale" signs. Yet inside, there was constant activity. Michael parked his car a block away. He watched for hours. Children came and went, some selling candy, others juggling by traffic lights. As night fell, they all returned to the same place. A heavy-set woman with dyed hair and a hard stare greeted them, clipboard in hand, as if she were managing inventory. Mercedes. A chill ran down Michael's spine. There she was. And in that instant he understood. This wasn't a home. It was a silent factory of exploitation. The next morning, in disguise, he scouted the perimeter. He bought candy from one of the kids and asked discreet questions. "Mrs. Mercedes is tough, but she takes care of us," one boy said. "If we don't bring money, we don't eat." The others said nothing, just kept their heads down. The fear was obvious, and so were the signs. Scratched arms, sunken eyes, holy shoes, all carrying backpacks and bound by schedules. Michael's blood boiled. He knew he couldn't act on impulse. He needed evidence, but he couldn't resist. That afternoon, he knocked on the door. Maria answered. When she saw him, her eyes lit up, then immediately clouded with fear. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see you. I needed to know you're okay." She hesitated. Behind her, a figure approached. Mercedes. "Yes?" Mercedes said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. "I'm Michael Walker. I'm a friend of Maria's." "Oh, the rich guy," she replied with a fake smile. "Maria mentioned you. How nice of you to help a little street girl. Now go on. She's busy." "Can I talk to her? Alone?" "Of course not," came the curt response, the smile turning into a threat. "The children here have routines. You're trespassing on my turf." "I know who you are, Mercedes. I know what you do, and I'm going to prove it." The smile vanished. "I'm not afraid of a guy in a suit. Maria is here because her mother wanted her to be. I've got the papers. Now get out." Maria watched them silently, torn between hope and fear. "She's not your daughter," Michael insisted. "Is she yours?" Mercedes shot back coldly. "You vanished from Rachel's life. Now you want to play hero. How convenient." Michael gritted his teeth. "I'll take this to court." "Go ahead," Mercedes said, crossing her arms. "But know that while you waste time in courtrooms, Maria sleeps in my house, eats my food, and follows my rules. You may have money, but I have custody." He wanted to shout, to scoop Maria into his arms and run. But he knew there was something more dangerous than yelling, Mercedes's game of lies, manipulation, and legal threats. She was ready and knew how to exploit every loophole. He left the place with his chest in flames. Maria followed him to the sidewalk. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean for you to come. She might hurt you." "I know, but I'm not leaving you here. If she finds out I talked to you, she'll punish the other kids. We're her currency, Michael, and you're a threat." That cut deeper than any blow. "Do you trust me?" "I don't know, but I want to." "Then hang tight. I'll be back. But I'll do things the right way." Maria nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. She didn't cry easily, but that day she almost did. Michael climbed into his car and started the engine, feeling himself venture into dangerous territory. He knew he needed more than money. He needed strategy, evidence, legal support, and above all, patience. Mercedes had built a silent empire, but like every corrupt regime, it had a weakness, and he was about to find it. Michael was cornered by invisible walls, by cruel laws, by silences that suffocated. He needed a legal strategy, someone experienced, someone he could trust. That's when he thought of Nathan. An old college friend, trusted partner in the early days of the company, Nathan was more than a lawyer. He was like a brother, someone who knew Michael's ghosts almost as well as he did. He called late in the afternoon. "Michael Walker, after all this time, I thought you'd only call if the world was ending." "Maybe it is, Nathan. I need help, personal help." They arranged to meet at Nathan's office, an elegant townhouse in a posh neighborhood. When Michael arrived, his old friend greeted him with a warm hug, as if no time had passed. "You disappeared," Nathan said, pouring coffee, "and now you show up looking like you've seen a ghost." "I did. The ghost of my own forgotten life." Michael told him everything, about Maria, the ring, the photograph, Rachel, the hospital, Mercedes, the possible abduction, the fear in the girl's eyes. Nathan listened in silence, his face full of empathy. "That's heavy. But if this girl really is Rachel's daughter, and maybe yours, I'm not sure yet of anything. I only know she needs help, and fast. Of course, we'll get organized, but carefully, legally. First, avoid direct confrontation. Second, gather evidence, witness statements. A DNA test would be ideal. With consent, you forcing it could look suspicious. I've thought of that, but Mercedes is bulletproof. Fake papers, bogus permissions, connections, and fear is her weapon." Nathan scratched his chin. "This won't be easy, but nothing's impossible. I'll file for an investigative custody petition. I need everything you have, the photo, the hospital records, Dorothy's name, and avoid direct contact with Maria for now. That could be used against you." Michael nodded, relieved to have an ally. "Thanks, Nathan. I knew I could count on you. Always have." But what Michael didn't know was that hours before their meeting, Nathan had taken another call. "We've got a problem," Mercedes said on the other end. "The rich guy is poking around where he shouldn't." "I'm on it," Nathan replied, sitting in his office, typing. "He'll hand me everything, and I'll make sure he never gets near the girl." Mercedes laughed. "That's what I like. A profitable partnership. Just promise me one thing, Mercedes." "What? Don't touch the girl. Keep that part clean. Are you getting soft? Getting smart. Less dirt. Fewer risks." He hung up and stared at his screen. The plan was in motion. Everything Michael sent would be filtered, diverted, discredited, and, if necessary, used against him. Nathan had switched sides into the world where dirty money moves faster than the truth. In the following days, Michael entrusted Nathan more and more. He sent copies of documents, hospital information, even a discreet video of a conversation with Maria. Nathan replied optimistically, but his messages grew full of, "Let's wait. We can't act yet." That could hurt the case. Michael felt the weight of bureaucracy, but believed it was just the system moving slowly, not realizing the system had been poisoned from within. One afternoon, he went to Nathan's office to check on the progress. He noticed discomfort on the lawyer's face when he saw him. "Is something wrong?" Michael asked. "No, I'm just swamped with cases, but yours is a priority, rest assured." Yet his tone sounded too well rehearsed. Michael left with a nagging unease. Perhaps it was fatigue or suspicion. Across town, Mercedes watched the children return with their day's earnings, Maria among them. The girl's eyes were sharper now, more restless. "He's not taking you from me," Mercedes murmured, noting numbers in a spreadsheet. "No one will." Meanwhile, Nathan drafted a false legal opinion, a document that would reroute Michael's petition to an incompetent court, delaying matters for months. With luck, or with money, it would be buried on a shelf long enough to accomplish its purpose. The trap was set, and Michael still believed he was winning. Michael felt trapped by unseen walls, by cruel laws, by silences that choked him. He needed a legal strategy, someone experienced he could trust. That's when he thought of Nathan. An old college friend and early business partner, Nathan was more than a lawyer. He was like a brother who knew Michael's demons almost as well as he did. He called him late one afternoon. "Michael Walker, after all this time, I figured you'd only call if the world was ending." "Maybe it is, Nathan. I need help, personally." They agreed to meet. The next morning, Michael dressed simply and took Maria to a private lab. Maria hesitated. She was wary of hospitals, white coats, too many questions. But Michael was patient. He explained carefully that he needed to know if she was truly Rachel's daughter, and maybe his own. "What if I'm not?" she asked, looking him straight in the eye. "It doesn't change anything, but I need to know, for both our sakes." She agreed, not out of complete trust, but by instinct. Michael was the only adult who didn't yell at her, who met her gaze, who seemed sincere. At the lab, the process was quick. Saliva sample, paperwork, consent forms. The result would take 5 days that felt like years. Michael barely slept. He revisited old photographs, letters, memories of Rachel. He compared gestures, smiles, features, searching in Maria's face for a reflection of a past that still ached. He clung to the hope that something good had survived the shipwreck of his separation from Rachel. On the 5th day, the lab called. "You can come pick up the result in person." He drove there with sweaty hands and a tight chest. He received the sealed envelope, sat in his car parked at the curb, took a deep breath, and opened it. Result: genetic incompatibility. Michael sat frozen. His eyes scanned the words over and over as if searching for another meaning. But there was none. The test was clear. He was not Maria's biological father. The blow hit harder than he'd expected. For hours he stayed in the car in silence. Everything inside him felt like it was collapsing. The hope, the connection, the dream of a second chance. Had it all been mere loneliness, a desperate man clinging to a ghost from his past? He went home without calling Maria. He needed time, air. That night he didn't eat. He ignored calls. He lay in bed with the envelope on his chest, wanting the truth torn out by force. But there was no escape. Blood spoke loudest. The next morning, Maria appeared at his building's entrance. "Hi," she said hesitantly. Michael stared at her, still shattered. "You found out?" she asked. "No, but I felt it. You vanished. Something went wrong, right?" He didn't answer at once. Then he knelt to her level and took her hands. "The test came back negative, Maria. I'm not your biological father." She bit her lip, wrestling with a feeling she couldn't name. "So, does that mean I really belong to no one?" "No, that's not it." "But you believed you were my father, and now that I'm not, you're going to disappear?" Michael felt the sting. "No, I'm still here. Because you matter to me, Maria, with or without a test. I promised I'd take care of you. That promise still stands." She turned away, brushing back a tear. "Do you think my mom lied about who my father was? Maybe she was protecting you. Or maybe she didn't know. Sometimes the past holds more questions than answers." Maria nodded silently, then said, "So, can I keep calling you Michael? But maybe one day I'll call you Dad." Michael felt his heart tighten. For the first time in years he cried. And it wasn't pain, it was acceptance. From that day on, they never mentioned DNA again. Michael began seeing Maria often. He bought her new clothes, brought her meals, helped with homework, and paid for medical checkups Mercedes ignored. Though Maria still lived under Mercedes's roof, she spent more time with Michael than before. He taught her to play chess. She showed him how to navigate crowded buses. They laughed together, bickered over small things, looked out for each other, and even without a paper confirming it, they both knew their bond was real. But Mercedes watched it all with narrowed eyes. She knew she was losing her grip, and for her, that was unacceptable. In the darkness of her back room, she picked up the phone. "Nathan, we've got a new problem. The rich guy's getting too sentimental." Nathan sighed on the other end. "Don't worry. If he didn't get the message from the test, he'll understand the next step." Michael's world seemed to spin in circles. With every new revelation, a new shadow emerged. But amid all the uncertainty, there was a quiet hope. The DNA test. If it confirmed what his heart insisted on, everything would change. Justice, rights, the truth, all hinging on that single sheet of paper. Getting the test wasn't easy. Maria hesitated. She distrusted hospitals, white coats, endless questions. But Michael was patient. He explained gently that he needed to know if she really was Rachel's daughter, and perhaps his own. "And what if I'm not?" Maria asked, meeting his gaze steadily. "It changes nothing. But I need to know, for both our sakes." She agreed, not out of blind trust, but by instinct. Michael was the only adult who never yelled at her, who looked her in the eye, who seemed sincere. At the lab, the procedure was swift. Saliva collection, paperwork, signed consent. The result would take 5 days, 5 days that felt like an eternity. Michael scarcely slept. He pored over old photographs, letters, memories with Rachel. He compared gestures, smiles, features, searching Maria's face for a reflection of the past that still hurt. He clung to the hope that something good had survived the wreck of his separation from Rachel. On the 5th day, the lab called. "You can come pick up the result in person." He drove there with sweaty hands and a pounding chest. He took the sealed envelope, sat in his parked car, drew in a deep breath, and opened it. Result: genetic incompatibility. Michael sat motionless. He read the words again and again, as if another meaning might emerge. But there was none. The test was definitive. He was not Maria's biological father. The blow struck harder than he'd anticipated. For hours he sat in the car in stunned silence. Everything fell apart inside him. Hope, connection, the dream of a second chance. Had it all been nothing but loneliness? A desperate man clutching at a ghost? He went home without calling Maria. He needed space, fresh air. That night he skipped dinner, ignored calls, went to bed clutching the envelope on his chest as though he could wrest the truth out by force. But blood doesn't lie. The next morning, Maria appeared at his building's gate. "Hi," she said, hesitant. Michael looked at her, still reeling. "You found out?" she asked quietly. "No, but I felt it. You disappeared. Something went wrong, right?" He didn't answer at once. Then he knelt before her and took her hands. "The test is negative, Maria. I'm not your biological father." She bit her lip, wrestling with an unnamed emotion. "So, does that mean I really belong to no one?" "No, that's not what I mean." "But you believed you were my father, and now that I'm not, you're just going to vanish." Michael felt the sting of her words. "No, I'm still here, because you matter to me, Maria, with or without a test. I promised to take care of you, and I will keep that promise." She looked away, brushing a tear aside. "Do you think my mother lied about who my father was? Maybe she was trying to protect you, or maybe she didn't know for sure. Sometimes the past holds more questions than answers." Maria nodded quietly. Then, softly, "So, can I keep calling you Michael? But maybe, one day, I'll call you Dad." Michael's heart tightened. For the first time in years, he wept, not from pain, but from acceptance. From that day forward, the DNA question was never raised again. Michael began seeing Maria regularly. He bought her new clothes, brought her meals, helped with homework, and paid for checkups Mercedes ignored. Though she still lived under Mercedes's roof, she spent more time with Michael than ever. He taught her chess. She taught him how to navigate crowded buses. They laughed, bickered over small things, and watched out for each other. And even without a legal document, they both knew their bond was real. But Mercedes watched with narrowed eyes. She knew her hold on Maria was slipping, and that was unacceptable. In the darkness of her back room, she dialed her phone. "Nathan, we have a new problem. Mr. Rich Guy is getting too sentimental." Nathan sighed. "Don't worry. If he didn't get the message from the test, he'll get the next one." The following days were a whirlwind, smooth only on the surface. Michael and Maria continued meeting almost daily, building a routine that, though unstable, had become familiar. He strove to make up for what fate had denied them, offering support, affection, and a home under construction. But inside, Michael still bore the open wound of the DNA test. Doubt lingered. No matter how hard he tried to ignore it, something inside him screamed, the bond between them was too real to be coincidence. One sweltering Wednesday morning, a brown envelope appeared at his building's front desk. No return address, no postal stamp, just his name, handwritten. Michael opened it carefully. Inside was a simple letter on notebook paper, the handwriting trembling yet firm. He recognized it immediately. It was from his mother. "My little Maria, if you're reading this letter, it means time has run out. I'm so sorry. I wanted more days, more mornings with you, more bedtime stories. But life, it was hard on me, and perhaps it has been hard on you too. First, forgive me for not telling you everything, for hiding part of the truth. I thought I was protecting you, but maybe I only left you more alone. Your father's name is Michael, Michael Walker. Yes, the very name you've heard in my stories. He doesn't know you exist. He never did. Not his fault. Mine. I was afraid of disrupting his life, which was so big, so different from mine, and maybe proud too because I loved him so much and couldn't bear to depend on him. But now I see that was a mistake. He was the great love of my life, Maria, and you are the best piece of both of us. If you ever find him, if he recognizes you, look into his eyes. You'll see me there, deep inside. You'll feel it and tell him that I never forgot him. With eternal love, Mommy." Maria read the letter twice, then folded it back up gingerly, as though touching her mother's very heart. She ran off at full speed. Michael was in a meeting with his lawyers when Maria burst into the room, out of breath, clutching the envelope. "I found this. It's from my mother." Everyone fell silent. Michael stood, took the letter with reverence, and asked for a moment alone. In his office, seated before the window with the city skyline behind him, he read. Each word landed like a whisper from the past. Guilt, love, silence, and finally, the truth. Maria was his daughter, always had been. Michael wept, not discreetly nor with restraint, but like a man whose soul was washed clean by words from the other side of time. "She loved me," he murmured, "and she was afraid." Maria hugged him, quietly, firmly. "I was scared too, you know. And now? Now I have you." It was the simplest and most powerful answer. In that moment, the wounds of the past began to heal. Rachel's absence would still hurt, but she left behind a legacy, a daughter, a letter, and a bridge rebuilt between two lives that should never have been torn apart. Michael placed the letter in a wooden box that had belonged to Rachel and locked it in his office safe, not out of fear of losing it, but because he understood that piece of paper was the most intimate proof that love, even delayed, can still triumph. That night, father and daughter shared their first dinner as a family. No ceremony, just rice, beans, laughter, and an old TV playing cartoons. The silence between them was comfortable, and for the first time in a long while, the future seemed possible. Rachel's letter still echoed within Michael like an old song resurfaced at last. Every word seemed to realign past and present, and the certainty that Maria was his daughter came not just from a test or blood, but from the growing affection between them. But peace would be fleeting. The following week, Michael's new attorney arrived at his office wearing a grave expression. "We found something odd while digging through old records, an affidavit attached to a filing from years ago that you should see." Michael nodded, a familiar tightness in his chest. It was a notarized declaration dated 2014. In it, Rachel affirmed that Maria was her daughter, but that the biological father was unknown. She went on to state that she did not wish to involve Mr. Michael Walker, and that any speculation regarding paternity would be unfounded. The floor seemed to vanish beneath him. Michael read the document repeatedly. He recognized the signature. It was hers. "How could this be?" he whispered. "We're still investigating," the lawyer replied. "Perhaps it was meant as protection, or maybe she really wasn't sure." The attorney left the room, giving Michael space to absorb the news. He remained seated, staring at the paper, as if it contradicted everything he'd built with Maria. Her mother's letter, the positive DNA result, the deep bond they shared, all now clouded by fresh uncertainty. At the end of the day, he found Maria on the balcony of their temporary apartment, sketching her mother's face in a notebook. "Can I show you something?" he asked. She nodded. Michael sat beside her and placed the affidavit on her lap. "It's from your mother, but it says, 'Maybe I'm not your father.'" Maria was silent as she read, her gaze drifting from the page to him. After a few minutes, she looked up. "Do you believe it?" she asked. Michael hesitated. "I don't know. Part of me wants to say it doesn't matter, but another part feels betrayed, confused." "She could have lied," Maria offered gently. "Or she tried to protect you. She always did. Protected even when it hurt. She did, until the end." Maria inhaled deeply. "You know, I once thought I'd never have a father, that I'd grow up alone, become an adult alone, without a real last name, without anyone to remember me." She met his eyes. "But now I have you. With papers or without, with DNA or without. And if they ever say we're not father and daughter, I won't believe it. Michael felt the knot in his throat loosen. Neither will I. He wrapped his arms around her, this time not weighed down by doubt but buoyed by choice. Because biological truth could be uncertain, but the love they shared needed no proof. He chose to be her father. And Maria, with the same instinct that had kept her alive on the streets, chose to be his daughter. The next day, Michael asked his attorney to file both documents, the letter and the notarized declaration, so the judge could see every facet of their story. It wasn't about proving who was right, it was about being honest. Meanwhile, Mercedes was feeling the squeeze of the investigation. Social worker visits, anonymous complaints, official reports, all signs that her days of manipulation were numbered. But she still had a card up her sleeve. And Nathan, though silent since facing Michael, watched from the shadows, hurt but still dangerous. The final confrontation was approaching, but Michael was ready, because now, with or without absolute certainty, he had the most important thing, a daughter, and an unwavering resolve to fight for her. The courtroom was packed that morning, but the silence inside was thick. The judge, a grey-haired, attentive man, carefully leafed through the documents before him. Michael sat next to his new attorney, tense yet composed. A few rows back, Maria watched him with steady eyes. Across the room, Mercedes wore a mask of feigned innocence. This custody hearing was the culmination of a long journey. More than a legal proceeding, it was the resolution of an emotional, moral, almost existential struggle. Michael wasn't there just for a signed piece of paper. He was there to legitimize, before the world, the decision his heart had already made. The judge polished his glasses, read the case file, and looked up at Michael. "Mr. Michael Walker, you claim that Maria Parker is your daughter." Michael took a deep breath. "I believe she is, but even if biology failed me, I would choose to be her father every single day of my life. Even in light of the document in which the mother states that you are not the father." "Yes, Your Honor, because I have a second letter, more intimate, more honest, in which Rachel admits she was afraid to seek me out, but confirms that Maria is the fruit of our love. And beyond that, because the DNA test was tampered with and later verified by an authentic examination. But truly, I'm not here for a lab result. I'm here for a little girl who spent her life forgotten and who now needs to be remembered and loved." The judge nodded, then turned to Maria. "Maria, would you like to say something?" She stood, her heart pounding but her voice clear. "I didn't know what it meant to have a father. I thought fathers were people who disappeared, who yelled, who struck. But then I met Michael, and he never yelled at me. He listened. He fed me. But more than that, he gave me a name. He gave me calm. Even without any certainty, he stayed. And to me, that's what being a father means." A wave of moved murmurs swept the room. The judge returned to his papers, drew a steady breath, and declared, "In light of the evidence, the testimonies, and above all the undeniable emotional bond between Maria Parker and Mr. Michael Walker, this court grants permanent custody of the minor to Michael Walker." A Mercedes rose, furious, but two officers stepped forward and restrained her. Her shouts faded into the hallway. Michael remained seated, tears welling in his eyes. He looked at Maria. She ran into his arms. Their embrace was silent and prolonged, as if for the first time they breathed the same air, without fear, without doubt. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and microphones, but Michael ignored them. He took Maria's hand, and together they walked to the car. "So, what now?" she asked in the passenger seat. "Now we begin." "Begin what?" "A new life, with a real home and a dog, with whatever you want. And can I call you Dad?" Michael smiled, moved. "I'd love that." "Okay then, Dad." He started the engine, and for the first time in many years, he felt complete. Above them, the clouds began to part. Sunlight poured between the tall buildings, flooding the city that had so often swallowed him in solitude. But now there was room. For love, for new beginnings, for choice. Because he had finally understood, being a father isn't carrying a name on a piece of paper, it's carrying another soul alongside yours, even on the hardest days. It's choosing to stay, choosing to love. And Michael chose. I hope you enjoyed today's story. If you did, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought about the story. See you in the next video.